Hello, and thank you for watching this presentation of Power and Ethics in Business Communication. This presentation is produced and brought to you by the Blue Crew. I'm Forrest Milheim, speaking on behalf of the group. Now, before we jump in, here's a quick look at our works cited for the presentation. Now, the purpose of the presentation is to address these 5 key questions. You can go ahead and pause the video here to read those in detail, and we're going to get right into it. Now, to talk about ethical responsibility, we must first define ethics. The meaning of ethics is the moral principles and values of a group. Religious groups and extracurricular clubs or teams have beliefs based on a common set of principles and values. They share a common goal, which they achieve through ethical communication. We also see ethical communication play out in customer service relationships as well. When you're working with a client or customer, you want to be respectful and understanding to problem solve their situation, provide excellent service, and ultimately strengthen the relationship. The basic tenets of ethical communication are honesty, respect, and consideration of basic human rights. Honesty is what builds your integrity in the workplace and establishes you as a trustworthy individual. Respect is an important way to show your appreciation of others and their contributions. And lastly, we must remember that even though our colleagues may sometimes be of a different cultural, ethnic, or political background, they have the same basic human rights that we do. How does this relate to a person's position in an organization? Well, the bottom line is that everyone in business is a communicator. Whether they're internal positions or positions which interface with the public, they're a business communicator, and communicators at all levels have a responsibility of ethical communication. To take that a step further, external or customer-facing positions must ethically communicate with the public. Customers rely on clear and non-misleading product information, while investors rely on honestly and ethically reported financials. And when it comes to internal communications, business operations rely on honest and ethical communications within the company as well. So do people with more positional power have more ethical responsibility than those with less? Well, first, let's define positional power. BusinessDictionary.com defines it as authority and influence bestowed by a position or office on whoever is filling or occupying it. Because of this, we need to understand what responsibility this places on those in power. When a supervisor at work asks you to do something, how is that different than one of your peers asking the same thing? Are you more likely to do what the supervisor asks versus one of your peers? Well, probably so, and this is because of your supervisor's positional power. We need to consider the types of situations that may arise because of this power. Now let's look at 3 types of positional power and how they're used in business. Legitimate power stems from the manager's position in the organization and the authority that lies with that position. Reward power is the extent to which a manager can use rewards to influence others. And conversely, coercive power is the opposite of reward power. It is the power of a manager to punish others as a means of influence. Each of these influences people in different ways, and it is important for those in positions of power to use these responsibly. Now, through each of the different means of communication that a manager might be using, be it email, meetings, or one-on-one communication, all 3 positional powers can manifest. But as a manager, they need to know the consequences of each of these powers and how their employees will react to them. Using these powers could help improve morale and build consensus in the workplace, but in other cases, there may be not only moral issues, but significant legal ramifications as well, especially when applying coercive power. So be very careful there. Now, in 2005, Kat Thompson of Experience Life magazine summarized for us quite well the power of language when she wrote, "Language has immense power, and its impact depends entirely on how we wield it." As we mentioned earlier, there are outcomes in communication that can be positive or negative. If one uses the correct language in their communications, the positive outcomes can be substantial. For example, say you are writing a thank you letter to your employer's executive team for your holiday bonus. To ensure the language is constructed correctly, you proofread the document for grammatical and verbiage errors. By ensuring your audience is receiving the message clearly and without errors, you can really help influence positive results. On the other hand, there are also issues that may emerge if consideration is not given for proper language in your communications. For example, a colleague is writing a formal business letter to you. As you read through the letter, there are a few claims that seem to have unethical content from your point of view. But as you take a step back and apply an objective lens to the situation, you might see that the colleague really may not have known that what they wrote was unethical or inappropriate. Now, a great way to avoid this kind of faux pas is to thoroughly proofread, identify and correct possible errors prior to distributing your communication. Also, it's never a bad idea to have a peer or colleague review it as well. When communicating with others in a business setting, the type of language we use is very important, and we need to be cognizant of these two questions. What is the consequence of language used in the workplace, and what responsibility does that place on the individual communicator? Think of how you feel when someone asks you to do something in a business setting. When people use positive language like please and thank you, morale is good, which nurtures good work environments, and you're likely to respond positively to that request. When people use negative language, such as swearing or placing demands, you're naturally defiant to it and morale is diminished. The consequences of the language we use can be good or bad. It can improve teamwork and communication, or it can create contention and decrease teamwork and productivity. Because of the power of language, it is the responsibility of the communicator to use the correct kind of language to help create that positive result. So in conclusion, ethical responsibility equals honesty and respect. All positions have a responsibility of ethical communication, although people with more positional power may have a higher degree of that responsibility. And lastly, the power of language is everything in business. Thank you.